The Master Key. L.W. de Laurence. Chapter 6. Lesson 5. The Abolition of Worry. The Acquisition of Serenity and Mind Power. Ready? The mental picture-making faculty which most minds possess should always be pressed into service where it is desired to either create any new faculty in the mind or to strengthen a weak one. Direction is the one thing that is lacking in regard to our forces. Our heart beats of its own accord, we say. The lungs act similarly. And we suppose that thought processes can initiate themselves and do their work without our interfering with them. But this is not so. Where energies are vigorously functioning every moment of the 24 hours, they need direction. Otherwise, being highly imitative, they copy whatever actions they may have just performed. That is what constitutes worry. It is going around and around in a vicious circle, coming to the same spot each time so that no problem is ever solved by worry, because the solution lies outside of the circle. We do not come across anything new, and it is the new we want when endeavoring to get out of a difficulty or to solve a perplexing problem. Life seems largely made up of these problems, and it is because of our want of success in removing them from one's path that so many stay where they are. Many pursue the same course year after year, following in the same old groove. They are conscious of not making headway. They feel that they are only marking time, yet however much they may desire to strike out, they are thwarted by these problems, and they move once more in the circumscribed orbit. The mental picture-making faculty must be set to work. If the student wants to learn how to concentrate, he must get hold of the tools needed in preparing the way for it. If a man does not know that he possesses a thing, he cannot expect to achieve something only to be accomplished by the aid of that something. Thus we have men and women who could be brilliant if they would, who could be clever if they wished, who could be much more than what they are. But if they think that all they are is present in their consciousness now, they cannot use the auxiliary, which would help them so wonderfully. A man who wanted to be healthy might, by working long hours, insisting on the barest necessities of life, wearing his clothes to rags, never having holiday, never helping anyone or anything, content to live in a garret, being miserly in the extreme, amass after many years a big sum of money. He could accomplish the same thing with infinitely less labor, no privation, enjoy himself thoroughly, widen out his character instead of cramping it, and give pleasure and profit to many. The strenuous and toiling path always has its counterpart. The student has been shown here the need for a wholesome state of mind before he can do much. The abolition of worry, the acquisition of serenity, the lessening of the number of activities, the tendency of the simple life has severely been brought under notice, and as one wheel cogs into another, so this practice of sketching out the mentality as you would like it will help him or her considerably. By seeing it as he would like it, he gives less attention to the actual state of the mind, so that whatever weaknesses there may be, by not being emphasized as they are in daily life, will gradually pass from the consciousness. And as this takes place, the conditions which the student would like to see in his mind will slowly become established And here one mental law will be of service to him. Mental matter is always in the state of building. Something is always being constructed. And it is invariably modeled on the patterns set it by the image-making proclivities of the mind. As the mind dwells on one set of images, by another great psychological law, the energy surges to the center thus created for the moment. Thinking always sets up increased activity in the consciousness, and as the mind pictures what it needs, what it would like, more and more energizing factors come along. These energies seek to build up the pictures furnished, and provided those pictures are not altered or modified repeatedly, they will become concrete. That is to say, they will set into motion those forces which will externalize the ideas contained in the mind. For as so frequently pointed out, the outcome of all thought is action, the bringing to the surface what has previously gone on underneath it. It's the result of the thought. Just as all we see around us in the universe is the effect of a cause, and not that cause, so all physical actions are the effects of causes set up in the mental and spiritual worlds. Seeing that it takes little more labor to image the mentality, as we should like it, well, we might as well idealize our images. However far short of such ideals our minds may be at the present moment, let's see ourselves performing those things we habitually do in the most perfect manner possible. If we're not able to concentrate, well, then let us see ourselves keeping our mind uninterruptedly on the point we wish to consider. There was a difference in seeing ourselves do this and actually doing it. And this will be understood later, but this preliminary practice will contribute its quota to the success we seek. The mind can only work to patterns. It cannot produce something on which the thought has not been working. So that the more clearly and more frequently the mind can be impressed with the mental pictures of what is desired, the more certain the outcome, the more sure that we shall realize what we set out to realize. And here it will be well to decide what is best for the time being. So many want this and that and the other and think about each in succession. That one set of mental pictures or ideas neutralizes the other. The habit of having a lot of unfinished work about is common on the physical plane. And the muddle it causes to all around is obvious. In the mind, it is even more fatal, for it destroys the efficiency of the mechanism of the mind. No two people may feel the same need, so each should decide for himself as to what will most help him at the particular point of his success. Generally speaking, it's wisest to take the weakest trait and strengthen that by the laws enunciated herein. A common fault with the beginner in applied metaphysics is the desire to accomplish too much. When he learns the possibilities of mind, what he can become, what he can do, he wants to be everything all at once. And the forces of his mind tumble over each other in their eagerness to obey his desires. He rouses things up within the circumference of his mental powers, and great activity is manifest for some time. Often, as a result, a new idea crops in unexpectedly, as if he is, and if he is wise, he will act on it. But this should only be done when he sees clearly ahead the legitimate results of the action. This the habit of making images will do. And though he may make mistakes in his deductions at first, he will mature his judgment and later will rarely need advice from others as to the best course to pursue under given circumstances. The encumbering mental material must be got out of the way. A definite plan must be sketched and then adhered to. By taking the weakest trait, refusing to see it at all as weak, but rather the highest state of efficiency you can conceive, you begin a policy of constructive thought, and therefore strengthen it at the outset. Of course, if action is part of the plan, you must see that it is not lacking. Otherwise, you become a mere theorist. a dreamer, action is nearly always concerned, it will be found. And however unpleasant it may be, excuse me, and it nearly always is in these cases, because that's why it was not performed before. It must be resolutely carried out. The other faculties of the mind must cooperate with the desire to amend the weakness. If the action has an unpleasant aspect or character, it must be looked at from quite another standpoint and thus rendered innocuous. It has this side, be sure, and it is for you to find it out. We give life to errors and then take the errors for truth itself, and therefore think we cannot get away from the result. Mental or soul forces frittered away in 100 different directions accomplish nothing. Excuse me. Where were we? The thing. Where is it? Accomplish nothing any more than the sun rays do. Focus them by scientific concentration. And we know how intensified is the power that is expressed thus. If there was a weakness in the character and the mind pictures the opposite virtue, strong and radiant, the gaps between where you now stand and the place you aim to be at will sooner be filled up. However, having materially strengthened a weakness, so much so that scarcely a trace of it remains, one can then turn one's attention to other sides of the character which need development, or the building in any side that will help us to secure this wider power of concentration. Till we have that, we shall content ourselves with repairing breaches, with strengthening our ordinary mentality, and leave the creative aspect of the new psychology for future experiments. Knowing what you want will indeed be a great gain, as it will conserve force. And that force can be turned into channels where it will accomplish our purpose more effectively than it would if diverted into first one channel and then into another. This knowing what you want is one of the most tantalizing things in the world. Man being so much a creature of moods, unlike a rock or animal whose wants are few and therefore no ambition, he has 1,001 activities, all of which call for expression at some point, and he spends most of his time in gratifying them. All the five senses demand gratification, and there are other physical activities which do not come into fivefold division, which quite as urgently seek gratification. Add to these the energies of the mind, which are so much more numerous, though in the early stages of life are not so articulate and insistent, that one begins to understand how complex and marvelous is man's composition. The greater part of the lives of many is spent in a more or less aimless manner. There's no plan laid down at the commencement, except in a very general way. Possibly the first thing that occurs to a youth after leaving school is that he must be successful in whatever calling is to follow. Then later he may marry and assume family responsibilities when a broad division occurs in the plan, and those dependent upon him claim his care. These two divisions, however, make up the ideal of his life. A hobby coming in as an additional energy of the man. But apart from these natural wants, numerous others arise from time to time. These are largely due to impressions from the without, which we call circumstances. Hopes, fears, desires chase each other in quick succession. And all these alternatives, although giving rise to a certain amount of activity, do not educe a definite plan. Nearly all these moods are of the surface of the mind, and it is one reason why one so seldom knows what one wants. This is not an enviable condition. And so long as mental action is confined to the surface, so long will there be a blankness as to definite plans. The true mind can never work thus. There must be depth. And to secure depth, one must try to feel the finer side of the mind. All thought must have an objective. And it is not by passing from one thing to another that is gained. What might be called the metaphysical attitude must be adopted, because in that attitude do we perceive what we really want. This attitude is concerned only with those actions which take place in the depths of the mind, which are detached from the everyday side of existence. And as those states of the mind are contacted, the man comes to know what is the real mind. He learns to know what he really wants, what it is he is capable of enjoying, of understanding. But so long as he lives and thinks like the majority, so long as he's shut out from those depths of finer mentality. As soon as they are contacted, thoughts and actions become complementary in the true sense, and the thinker is enabled to secure what he really wants. Even the student of metaphysics is not exempt from the weakness of not knowing what he wants. He sees perhaps 20 things he believes he wants, and works ardently at one, then another for a time. But through misapplied energy and want of knowledge, he does not secure definite results. He does not perceive that only by knowing how the mind works, the order in which the various faculties of the mind are to be evoked and developed, can he realize what he wants. Trying to stimulate first this, then that faculty with spasmodic prods here and there may result in increased activity of the faculties involved. But this is not what one should seek. For as soon as the result of the prod or stimulus has been exhausted, they sink back to their normal level. By coordinating the forces and activities, powers are awakened that are practically self-acting. And once worked, they continued the work begun. Chapter 7 will be lesson 6. Self-control and self-reliance. Motives create interest. That's for the next video, and we'll see you there. The Master Key. LW Laurence.